talking about journeys, destinations, culture, adventure, gear, conservation, and all the things we haven't yet thought of. This episode is brought to you by Kensington Tours. Even with your passion for overlanding, sometimes you want to change things up and see the world differently. Discover more refined travel that's customised and arranged for you with an expert private guide at your side. That's travel with Kensington Tours. Whether you dream of Italy for history, Kenya for safari, or Japan for food, it's a personal, once-in-a-lifetime trip every time. Visit kensingtontours.com today when you're ready to see the world differently. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the At Overland Europe podcast. Today, Reece Rheinbach joins me again after a fairly long stint in his second home, Mexico. Reece is back in Europe and preparing to embark on an exciting off-road tour all the way around the Iberian Peninsula. Now, if you listened to our first podcast together, you'll remember that Reece successfully drove 1,000 miles off-road in Wales earlier this year. And boy, did he have a few issues along the way. Well, he's using that hard-earned experience to improve his rig and gear. In theory, Reece should be heading to the ferry about now. But guess what? He's still in the throes of reassembling the Toyota. Enough spoilers. Let's get into the studio. Reece, welcome back. Such a long time since we last spoke and saw each other. How are you?
I'm really good, Mike. Great to see you. Great to see you. How are you doing yourself?
It's busy, as usual. Been travelling a little bit, not much. Did Western Alps earlier on in the year and also did the Catalonian Pyrenees.
Nice.
So,
very cool.
Been out and about, yes.
Is that in Grenadiers by any chance? Or
It was indeed. It was in a Grenadier Quartermaster.
Very nice
So
indeed.
the pickup version, we put a rooftop tent on it, threw a bunch of gear in the back and went off exploring, yes.
So good. I am dying to get behind the wheel of one of those bad boys at some point. The day will come, but
It will indeed. We'll get something out there for you. Reece, you've been away. You've been in Mexico.
I have.
Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Sure. Okay. So I have been, it was a glorified visa run, this one, really. I'm a temporary resident over there in Mexico. I've been spending kind of half the year out in Mexico and half, either in the UK or in Europe for the past kind of 3-4 years. And so this was a run to set myself on the road towards permanent residency. So I went and did all the bureaucracy stuff in the capital, Mexico City, and then kind of hung about for a few months and just took it in, basically,
So you're really becoming a permanent resident there then?
I am. That's the plan. Yeah. So it's kind of a road that I started on down maybe 2-3 years ago when I decided that I wanted to kind of make Mexico my home in the future, So I've been ticking all the boxes and presenting myself as a good, upstanding citizen, so they'll grant me it, And so, yeah, I think we're pretty well along the route, and give it a couple of years and I'll have that permanent residency. So
cool.
Yeah, mission
very
almost
cool.
accomplished.
Do you have a vehicle out there as well?
I don't, and it's the thing that I miss the most when I'm out there. I love Mexico and everything about it, the terrain, the people, the food, and that. But not having a vehicle, it does feel like I'm missing a limb or something like that. So that will be the next thing, whether I purchase something out there or whether I bring the Land Cruiser over. I'm not quite sure yet. I have this mad idea that I'd like to go down into Central America and buy another 70 series. They have, the 75s and 78s down there, and then drive it up. So we'll see what comes of that plan. But yeah, a 70 series on 2 continents. I don't know if it's a good idea, to be honest. I'll be forever rebuilding hubs.
Because when were you last there with the Toyota?
With the vehicle, I passed through, it must have been 2016, I think, and it was part of the Pan American Highway, which we talked about at length before. So yeah, it must have been 2016, and then I headed south, through 2017 and 18 as well. But that was well into South America back then.
So have you seen much change in Mexico since you were first there? I mean, it's 6-8 years ago now.
Yeah, pertinent question for people in Mexico City. There's been a lot of, COVID changed things a lot for Mexico. It was one of the few countries that remained totally open for business throughout the pandemic. And so, depending on which side of that you fell, I think it was good and bad for various different people, but it opened people's eyes, I think, to how good it was down there. And so there's tons of Americans that have ended up there, and they're pushing prices up for the locals, and I'm playing my part in that, obviously. So it's a very hot button subject, for a lot of people. You go to a kind of, a cocktail party there or whatever, and it's not long before that one raises its head in conversation.
All right.
But as regards other things, it generally stays the same. It's an incredibly diverse and varied country in every way, and it has all the kind of topography you can imagine, and from high mountains to deserts to jungles and all that kind of thing. So it's really, really cool to explore. And as regards the history side of things, I'm a big fan of empire, colonial history and that kind of thing. So there's tons of that, like Cortez and the Aztec empires, sort of wars and all that stuff. So yeah, incredible to see all that.
How's your Spanish then these days?
It's all right. I have been kind of reaching the point where I can hold a reasonable conversation with most people. It's still something that I need to improve on, but it's a bit of fun, learning a language, as you know.
Absolutely.
And when you finally kind of get there, you do start to feel like, oh wow, I can kind of do this,
Yeah. Do you miss much when you're in Mexico? Do you miss Europe or the UK?
I do, yeah. There are parts. It's a funny thing, it's probably a case of the grass is always greener. Like when I'm there, I miss here, and when I'm here, I miss there, and that's just the way that goes. But yeah, there are certain things, like family. I have grandparents here and stuff, and so I miss them. In the UK, I don't miss a damn thing about the weather here. That is always better in Mexico. But yeah, certain other things, I love the Mexican food, but occasionally you get kind of like a craving for something European. And so, yeah, I love Europe as well. And so, being in Mexico, you feel kind of apart from that. And so, yeah, there are parts of it that I do, but Mexico in general is the place where I think that I'll end up,
Right. So you've now come back after a long stint in Mexico, and you have some exciting plans, don't you? You're looking to explore the Iberian Peninsula.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm calling it the Iberian Trail. I'm going to attempt to circumnavigate the entire Iberian Peninsula without using paved roads. So I don't think anyone's ever attempted it in a four-wheel drive. I think people have done it on foot and on bicycle. But I think that I will be the first in a 4x4 to do this if it's possible. I'll get out there and actually, find that out, I guess.
It's going to be exciting. So this is like your last trip, which was, 1,000 miles in Wales off-road. That was the big practice run for this one.
You got it. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to, that was another trip that I didn't know whether it was going to be possible or not to do 1,000 miles inside of the UK off-road, and it turns out that it was. And so that got me thinking kind of on a bigger scale, and so I've put together this route which will be a complete circumnavigation of Spain and Portugal, essentially, maybe a bit of Andorra as well. So yeah, it should be
very cool.
All in between, I'd say 6,000 and 7,000 miles in a big loop.
Yeah. If I sort of cast my mind back to when you went to Wales, and if anybody looks at your social media, which I must admit has grown a hell of a lot over the last couple of months, you did have a few challenges with the Toyota.
I did.
So I presume that since you've been back from Mexico, your preparations aren't just sort of figuring out the route, but mostly figuring out your vehicle.
Yeah, that's a fair way of putting it. Yeah, the vehicle is perennially in need of work. We've been through this, in our podcasts in the past, and there's never a moment that I'm not doing something on it. But with this one, I knew if I'm going to be on the road for a long time this time, it's going to be a several month expedition. And then thereafter, I'll probably continue, into Morocco and perhaps further into Africa. So I knew I needed this to be good to go this time. There's no half measures. And so, I'm in the middle right now of a full strip down and rebuild of pretty much everything in terms of mechanics, in terms of electrical system. I'm kind of overhauling the interior and doing a bunch of body work as well. So I'm deep in that at the minute, right here in British winter, putting in the hours in the cold,
Yeah. What sort of timescale have you got? Or what's your plan? Because that is a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, it's mega. So the big change that I've gone through in the last few weeks is that I've quit my full-time job. So I have been working a full-time remote job. And so I've quit that now and kind of working a couple of days a week. And so I do have a lot more time to dedicate to it, which is a good thing. The downside is that you always underestimate, or I do anyway, the amount of time that stuff takes. And so I kind of thought this would be a maybe 6-week turnaround max. And I'm currently on the 4th week of that. I am nowhere near halfway, I wouldn't have thought. So just classic underestimation on my part there. But I actually had a ferry booked for tomorrow, actually. And you can see how that. No, unfortunately not. No, so I had to kind of call up Brittany Ferries and beg them to change it. So we're going in at the beginning of January. Now I'll be departing, which will give me about a month, just over a month to get this done. Which I think it should be doable, in that time.
Surprises will turn up as usual, undoubtedly. One of your biggest headaches has been your hubs.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you're not the only person with this problem, it must be sort of on the forums or whatever. Have you got a proper solution yet?
So it seems to be a strange issue that uniquely affects cruisers of the age that mine is. And you're right, other people do have this issue, but it's few and far between. It seems to be a perfect storm of various different components coming together to cause this issue. And the problem is that basically the studs on the back of on the hub that hold the flange onto the hub mating surface shear, essentially. And people have different theories as to what causes it, but it's generally agreed that it's some kind of movement that could be caused by various different things, whether it's a bent inner axle, a bent axle housing. It could be bad, bearing maintenance. It isn't in my case because I've rebuilt the damn thing about every month the last 4 years. So, it's a nightmare, honestly. And so I have been on the forums and talked to specialists around the world, and I've settled on this idea of uprating the studs. So basically just making them bigger. So the ones on my vehicle are 8mm. Mm-hmm. And in the later cruisers, I guess Toyota must have figured out that this was an issue, and they've uprated them on like the 78s and 79s that came after my model to a 10mm stud. And so I took my hubs to a local machine shop and asked them to call my hubs out for these far thicker what do you call them, studs. It doesn't sound like a lot, 2mm, but actually when you get the stud in your hand, it's like significantly fatter, it's got a lot more meat on it. And so I've got 6 of those done, and also the dowels that go in there as well. I've operated those to 10mm. So this is kind of my last gasp at making this axle work. If this one fails, I know I've got to change the whole thing, and that's kind of like where I'm at with it now. I hope that this works. I really, really do, uprating the thing. But basically, what you're trying to do, I suppose, is like build in some tolerance to the assembly, If it doesn't work, then I'll be pulling the axle and replacing it with something. I'm not sure yet, but here's hoping. I've done the job, and this expedition will be, I suppose, the test.
Another test.
Oh, yeah.
So what about your cabin? Have you made any changes to that, or has it stayed largely the same as it was when you went to Wales?
So at present, it's largely the same, but I am in the process of making some modifications to it. Chiefly will be an outdoor cooking station. So on my previous trips, I've only had an indoor cooking area, a twin burner gas hob, on the inside.
Yeah.
And that was fine for winter trips, honestly. But in the summer, it gets like untenably hot in there very, very quickly. Using a twin burner thing when the sun's on the side of the vehicle, it feels like a sauna in there, and you like, cooking up a storm with sweat pouring down your face. It's horrible. So yeah, trying to kind of like manufacture something for the outside that's going to be probably like a drop down table that will have the cooking thing built into it. So I'll be able to cook on the outside as well. The configuration will remain on the inside largely the same. I'll make a couple of small modifications, but probably the only other big change on the inside will be a whole new red arc electrical system, 12-volt electrical system, and lithium batteries as well, which is going to be a big upgrade to my lead acids that I've stubbornly been holding on to for the last few years, which I've, in the end decided, right, okay, it is time to move with the times, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're putting sort of a cooking facility outside as well, is that going to be also gas-based?
It will be, yeah. So I run a little 4.5 litre gas bottle on the roof, and what I'm kind of planning to do is to split the line and just tee off from inside the camper and just have a line that goes to the outside on like a shut-off valve. And so that will supply the outside when I want to cook on the outside. Yeah. I do think that on this trip, since I'm for some reason going in the winter again, as seems to be my standard, I will probably be cooking on the inside most of the time anyway. But for when I go down to Morocco, it's going to be an outside job. So yeah, we'll see how that works out.
Have you ever heard of these Gaslow tanks?
I have, but I haven't heard all that much about them. Maybe you can enlighten me.
Gaslow is it's a UK manufactured product, I think somewhere around Peterborough. And I like them because, they come in different sizes. But the good thing is that you can, when they either get empty or if you just want to top up, you can pop down to the fuel station and put LPG in it.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So that gives you an awful lot of flexibility. I was just thinking, because of the time of year, I don't know how much, because your heating, I think, is diesel.
It is diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is going to save you gas, obviously. But it does have the benefit that you're not stuck with a gas bottle which might become empty, and then you've got to either find a replacement. Because topping up, I know that even topping up a gas bottle from Germany in Spain isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas the Gaslow version, literally you just pop into the next fuel station and top it up.
I've got to check out Gaslow then, 100%, because it is a problem. I did try to top up down in southern Portugal on one occasion, and I found it impossible, honestly. I ended up having to switch to a, camping gas?
The blue ones.
The blue ones, which is really expensive. I thought for what it was at the time, and so I ended up with a camping gas thing, and I just kind of carried around this dumb bottle of butane that was empty for the rest of the trip, So yeah, that's something that I definitely should think about before I leave.
Yeah, I've been using it now for the best part of this year anyway.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't have to refill it all the time. But I think the nice thing is that you don't have to wait for the bottle to be empty before you exchange it. If you know you're going into somewhere remote and it's 3/4 full, well, you can put the last quarter in.
Yeah.
That sort of
That's awesome.
reassurance.
Yeah, to have that flexibility as well, it's pretty good, because that historically has been the problem all over the world with like filling up, unless you're in third world countries where they're willing to, do some really dodgy things that could result in explosions, which...
Stand back and watch, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll check out Gaslow and maybe try and acquire one before the trip commences then in that case.
All right, well, let me sort of make my way back to your car again. You're now doing bodywork as well, you said.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know your car better than anybody. For somebody who, let's say, would like to get the same model of car, what would you be advising them today to watch out for when they go and start looking for one? And I will just sort of vaguely remember that you put a fist through one of your sills when you were buying yours. So,
yeah, that's right. I remember somebody told me once, if you can put a finger through any hole on the bodywork of a vehicle when you go to look at it to purchase, like walk away. And when I went to see this, there was a hole like that kind of size. I kind of thought, this is a dumb idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then I've been, to coin a phrase, regretting my life choices ever since. And so now I'm in this for better or worse. And quite honestly, the bodywork is a mess, and since I've had it, I've had that car almost 9 years now, and it's been a constant, case of just patching holes, bunging body filler in, trying to make it good until the next time that I have to do it, and I'm at the point where I think to make this car good for future, I'm probably going to have to swap the body, at some point. So, I would say to anyone thinking about it, look for rust, and just know that if the thing that you're looking at does have rust, you're in for a heavy ride, And it's not to say that I regret it, having to do this has, made me learn skills that previously I would have been intimidated by, like the idea of learning this skill set. It filled me with dread, and it's only just by, having to do it and look at welding videos on YouTube and how to do all this that I've learned how to do it. And now I can replicate that skill if I have to do it in the future. Hopefully I won't have to do it in the future, but at least I have the skill set, if I do.
What's the chassis like then on those vehicles?
Remarkably good.
Yeah.
There's not a scrap of rust on it. No. So the body is knackered, but the chassis is in unbelievably good condition. They don't rust for whatever reason.
Oh,
so cool. For that, at least I'm grateful,
Yeah. But even on the body side, as you said, you might have to replace it, but I think it's quite fair to say that you can get all the panels without much ado, can't you?
You can. Mine is a very particular model of Land Cruiser. It's a J73 with a drop-down front windscreen, and the idea was back in the 80s they kind of had this thing about dropping down windscreens. It was like a cool thing driving on the beach, with your windscreen drop down. And so this is one of those models, and it had an FRP top which lifted off as well. And so that means that the windscreen, I don't know what you call it, like the frame, I guess,
yep,
is unique, as are the shape of the doors. So it's not your standard Land Cruiser. They are possible to find, I think, but I've never been able to actually find them. So yeah, it's a case of, it would be an interesting thing to try to replace individual panels on this vehicle. Probably what I'll end up doing is, ending up somewhere in either North Africa or the Middle East, going to a Land Cruiser graveyard, getting a different model and just chopping it like I have with this and swapping out the entire body, and hopefully that will do it, at some point in the future.
Brave move.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about it now as if I know what I'm doing. I really don't know how I would start, but yeah.
I mean, you've done so much to that car because, I mean, you cut a lot off the back to put your own body on it anyway, didn't you?
I did, yeah, I did. And funnily enough, that was motivated largely by rust, at the back end. It was in the wheel arches and kind of around the back doors, it was all rusted out. And I remember looking at it after I came back from the Pan American Highway and thinking like, God, this, just to repair this and make it structurally sound is going to be probably as much work as chopping the bloody thing in half and building a camper on the back. In hindsight, it wasn't, but it spurred me on to do it anyway, and so I'm kind of grateful for that. It was the catalyst for me building that camper.
Yeah, nice. I like your camper.
Thank you.
Because what have you? I know I've asked this question before. I just can't remember what the answer was. What is the camper body made of?
So it's made of steel and aluminium. So I framed it up in 50 mil box section steel, all four corners and the subframe, if you like. And then I clad it in, I think it was 1.5 or 2 mil aluminium sheet, and then used 50 mil Celotex, like insulation, like it's the kind of thing that you'll use in cavity wall insulation in a house, to fill in the gaps, and then plywood on the inside. So it's kind of like my own sandwich panels, but with a steel reinforcement, And the thinking behind that was, at the time, that I kind of thought that steel was going to be way too heavy for the job. And ultimately, it is quite heavy for the job. But I did some calculations and I thought, using steel, yes, it's heavy, but I'm going to have to use a damn sight less of it than I would if I were doing it out of aluminium, for example, And so I kind of thought it's going to be negligible, the difference in weight, and so I went for steel. And given the punishment that I've put that thing through, having it on its side, I don't know what it was, 4 times in Wales, the aluminium skin is a mess, but actually structurally it's still fantastic, which I can't imagine would be the case if I had have chosen to do it out of aluminium or sandwich panels or, something along those lines. So in the end, I think it kind of paid off,
It certainly looks good. And as you say, I mean, you put it on the side enough times to test its durability.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
You're now in the throes not only of repairing and respraying your car, but you've done a lot of planning for your forthcoming expedition.
Yeah.
How have you found the routes you're going to be taking? Or are you going to be doing a lot of sort of looking for a route on the fly?
Bit of both. So I have done a lot of research and a lot of poring over satellite maps, for a great many hours, more than I would care to admit, whilst I was in Mexico. And I've basically followed the route that I think that I will end up taking via satellite map. I use a few different apps for this. You can get a lot of trails and stuff off Wikiloc and other apps like that. And so I generally start with that and string together like a basic route and then start to look at where I've got blanks to fill in, And so that's where like really detailed satellite maps come in, and I will like zoom right in there and see if I can kind of trace a line from one trail to another by using off-road tracks. There will be tons of it made up on the fly, because I know that in Spain, especially, apparently off-roading and, any kind of 4x4 is carefully controlled, apparently, by local institutions and governments and stuff. And so there'll be, I think, a lot of trails blocked and a lot with signs that say you can't pass through. And at that point, I will have to obviously like find my way around those kind of dead ends and stuff. So I'm planning for having to spend a lot of time doing that and to create new routes on the fly. But with satellite maps, the beauty of it is, you've got it anywhere because it's satellite. And so you can make a fairly informed decision if you have to route around a blockage or whatever. And the other thing is, of course, the time of year that I'm going, I expect to be a lot of the trails blocked with various different things, whether it be ice and snow, fallen trees that I, can't move, or rivers probably in Portugal will present a problem in some areas, being too high to cross. So, yeah, it'll be a mixed bag, I think.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, when were we there? We were in September. We were in the Pyrenees. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we did a lot of route planning beforehand.
Yeah.
But when you actually turn up and want to turn left and there's a chain across it saying no entry,
that's it.
Then you've got to do a rethink. But part of the problem we had, I think, was also the fact that they were using the area for pasture.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Which is why a lot of the tracks were then blocked off.
Yeah.
I don't know what the season difference will have. Maybe you'll have a benefit there that summer will be open, where we found it closed.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of research into Spanish law on this, and it seems like it's a bit of a double-edged sword the time of the year that I'm going, because there's a Spanish law called Ley de Monte, I think it's called, and it governs your access to natural areas via 4x4 tracks. And so in summer, a lot of middle and southern Spain, they block, or they don't block, but they have an ordinance across any off-road, anything that's not tarmac, basically. And you can't go on it in summer because there's a risk of wildfires. Yeah. So that won't present a problem for me going at the time of year that I am in the winter. However, I believe in the Pyrenees and in certain other mountainous areas, they actually do block a lot of the trails off for reasons of landslides and snow and ice, and like they don't want the trails to get, washed out with people going up them in four-wheel drives and stuff. So it's a bit of a kind of like catch-22. You're kind of damned either which way. Just depends on how you look at it,
Yeah, it's. I think there are plenty of trails out there. It's just going to be, as you say, looking for stuff. When you find something's blocked, find an alternative.
I think so. I think so.
The other thing which you're going to see a lot of is, and this is something which I really enjoyed, there was driving through areas and then coming across Roman ruins, the old fortresses. There is so much history out there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
If you can find a few older people who can also tell you stories, I think there's so much to look forward to.
Absolutely. That's one of the aspects that I'm looking forward to the most with this trip, honestly, Mike. The last trip that I did in the Iberian Peninsula was, I think it was 1,500 kilometers through Portugal from north to south. It was like basically the dry run for what I'm about to do. And the amount of history, as you just said, Roman ruins, ghost towns, there were like old towers that had defended the historical front lines of the Moorish conquests, and then the Christian kingdoms pushed back against that, in the kind of Middle Ages. And you just come across these. They're prolific throughout the Iberian Peninsula. It's absolutely incredible. And, because there are so many of them, it's not a big deal. You turn up, there's no one there. You're there alone with these like 2,000-year-old ruins. It's absolutely amazing. And I think this time around, I would really like to take my time. And like you say, if I can actually kind of connect with people at a local level a bit more, I would absolutely love that, maybe to get some sort of local stories and, a bit of an insight into the culture and the history of the place from a local eye,
Yeah. That's, I can't remember what it was, 2019. We spent a lot of time in Portugal exploring nearly deserted villages. So places where 50 years ago there had been maybe 200 people living there, but when you go there today, there's like 12.
Yeah.
And there is no youth, full stop. And I count myself in this case also as youth, because everybody there is like 80 years and older. Yeah. And the beauty of that is that when you do turn up and stop, first of all, they're a bit sort of wary about why the hell would you want to come here?
Yeah.
But if you can reach out and make contact, then they are just like overflowing with information and just so unbelievably friendly. And they really do take you in, and they'll feed you and talk to you. And I think you've got so much to look forward to down there.
Yeah, I think so. As you said, this kind of depopulation issue, especially in rural areas of Portugal, is at the same time, sad to see these communities like becoming extinct. But at the same time, it gives you, like you say, an opportunity to go and see something very unique and connect with people who have, like a wealth of history that, might be lost in the future. So it's an opportunity to go and speak to these people and, maybe hear and retell some of those stories that otherwise might be lost to history forever. And so, yeah, I think that will be a really cool thing. There was a time in Portugal last time I ended up in a small town in the north, and it was just as you said, it had been a community of maybe 200, 300 people in the past, and now there were probably 12 people there. And I kind of ended up staying there for a few days and got talking to a guy, and he was the youngest guy in the town, and I think he was 50, maybe 45, 50. He was a stonemason, and he was kind of carving stone things that people would put in orders for from the coast or from other countries, and then he would ship them out. But he was very proud of, being here, playing his trade from this place. He just like the only guy working in this town. It was quite a weird thing to see, all these houses falling down, literally falling down on the streets. This one guy just like chipping away at rock and sending these sculptures out to various different places. Very evocative thing to see,
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a case, the fact that sort of the population is dying out. As you say, it's the history which is disappearing.
Yeah.
But also the trades, the craftsmanship is disappearing.
Yeah.
I remember we met people who were literally the last of their kind. When these guys died, that handcraft which they practiced would go to the grave with them, because nobody's interested.
Yeah, it's sad. It really is. That's something that I think it's a problem that's afflicting the whole world right now, and I understand the trend in wanting to build quickly and easily buildings to house people and all that, but to watch the architectural heritage of the world disappear, I see it in Mexico. I'm very passionate about like history and old architecture, and it is sad to see, to think that we might be some of the last people who see this craft alive and well. It's pretty sobering, I guess it's part of the kind of moving times, and it will be what it will be. But it is a sobering thing to see. You just got to catch it while you can, I guess.
Yeah, but sort of touching on that, the developments in France the last 5 years, they had that horrendous fire.
Yeah.
Which wiped out the cathedral.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a building which, I don't know, took 400 years to build? Something ridiculous like that. And they've managed to restore it in 5 years.
That is incredible, actually.
And I was talking to, Tristan was telling me about it earlier on today, that they had all the problems because the roofing was all lead and the windows were lead. And of course, the fire, everything melted. So you got all this lead poisoning everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was a huge effort. Then there's the windows, which obviously got destroyed. I mean, some of them were restored or remade here in Cologne, at the Cologne Cathedral. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Anyway, we've digressed. We're now not on sort of the Iberian Peninsula anymore. Right, so you're going down there and you're just going to disappear before Christmas. I mean, excuse me for saying so. You were just saying a moment ago that you missed your grandparents. And now you're leaving them before Christmas.
Well, in the end, as things are transpiring, I think that I will end up leaving just after Christmas. Not that it was my initial plan. It's kind of... Time-wise, it was one of those things whereby I was meant to leave in October, and then visa things in Mexico kept me back there until the end of October. And then I was meant to leave at the end of November, and then car things have kept me back. And so, yes, I was going to be leaving on the 10th of December. And I did get a little bit of flack for that, honestly. And, as things have transpired, I'm not leaving on the 10th of December. So all will be well in that regard.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's one thing I did forget to ask a moment ago. Spare parts for your car. Are you sourcing them through Toyota, or are you sourcing them elsewhere?
So I'm sourcing all my parts from Euro 4x4 parts That's the company headed up in Bayonne in France.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've been really good. They've kind of offered to send me everything I need for this expedition and the rebuild beforehand. So yeah, it's been fantastic, and they're an absolutely brilliant company for 4x4 parts. They keep kind of almost everything you need for pretty much all 4x4s in Europe on the shelf, which I think is absolutely remarkable. You know, I can kind of call them up and get a prop shaft delivered for my 30-plus-year-old vehicle next day from France. It's an amazing thing. And so, yeah, they've been helping me out with parts, and there's been a lot going into it because as I said, I'm in the midst of refreshing everything that needs to be refreshed on that vehicle, from brake calipers, you know, wheel bearings, hub stuff, front prop shaft, all UJs, you know, everything you can imagine. And then other specialized things as well, like starter motor, oil, sump gaskets, and there's a massive amount of work going into it.
All right. So that basically means you've got your spare parts and logistics partners. So if anything should go wrong en route, then they have you covered.
That's it. Yeah. So I have kind of stocked up beforehand, and I will take a fair few parts with me. I always kind of look at my parts kit before I leave on an expedition and think, is this excessive? But then I play through everything in my mind and think, no, I'll just take it all, you know. And so, yeah, I'm going to be taking like a full set of bearings, for example, and, you know, all your kind of regular consumables. But it is nice to know, especially in Europe, that they can have anything out to me inside of a day, you know, wherever I'll be. And they also ship worldwide as well. It takes a little bit longer, but, you know, if I find myself down in the west of Africa somewhere, they'll ship down there as well, which is absolutely fantastic. When I can compare how things were for me on the Pan American Highway, I ended up getting stuck in a tiny little town in Bolivia for 6 weeks waiting for parts on one occasion. So to know that that's not going to be a thing that afflicts me in future is pretty gratifying, you know.
No, that's good. Yeah. I mean, it's actually, because you were saying you're sort of getting parts from almost one day to the next. That's actually quite difficult at the moment, shipping from Europe to the UK.
Yeah. It is. That's actually, it caused me a little bit of hassle, you know, bringing in all kinds of different things with the wisdom of Brexit, you know. And so, yeah, it's something that we have to deal with, unfortunately. But yeah, it never gets easier paying those customs bills, let me tell you that.
Well, let's not go down the route of Brexit. We'll stay off politics here.
I think so.
Right, back to the Iberian Peninsula. How you're going to take several months to do the whole tour, right? Yes,
I will. I'm not entirely sure how long it will take me, honestly. It's going to be one of those ones where I turn up and, you know, maybe it takes me a very short amount of time, but I suspect it might take a considerable amount of time. And not to dwell on the thing that we just left too much, but the other aspect of that is that I can only spend 3 months inside of the Schengen zone before I have to leave. I become persona non grata for 3 months. Ouch. And so, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to navigate. You know, I will, I think, have a choice to make when I get down to southern Spain and the Algarve in Portugal as to whether I will be able to do the whole loop in one setting. I would have to do it inside of 3 months and then be able to leave the Schengen zone with the car as well, or whether I have to leave to Morocco, presumably, you know, en route, if you like, and then come back to finish the Iberian trail.
Right.
So that's going to be one of those ones where I have to make the decision on the fly and make it up as I go along, as we overlanders have wanted to do, you know.
That happens, yes.
Yeah, so we'll see.
So how, I know you said at the beginning, I've forgotten though, the total kilometres you expect to do?
Yeah, I think it's going to be between like 8,000 and 10,000, more or less, in the loop. Very difficult to estimate again because, you know, you look at the loop and you think, okay, that's not actually that far, but then you zoom in and you realize the amount of switchbacks that go up and down mountains, you're soon doubling whatever, you know, the loop is. at least. And then, as you know, on these overland trips, you end up back and forth to get food, to get fuel, all that kind of thing. And so you can add another kind of 30% onto whatever you think that it's going to be generally on an overland trip. So yeah, I'd say probably 10, maybe even more, 10,000 kilometers in a loop,
Which at the end of the day is a hell of a lot to try and achieve in 3 months because, lots of switchbacks, that's one thing. But the terrain itself at that time of year, the higher you go, the more difficult it will become. I think that was one of the things which, even we experienced this year in the Pyrenees was we actually wanted to do a route which hadn't been driven quite clearly for some time. The route was only probably, 20 kilometers?
Yeah.
But it took the best part of a day to complete it. Purely Remarkable. Because it was diabolical. I mean, it was fun. It was a lovely challenge.
Yeah.
But then you sort of try and translate that into, okay, now you want to do 10,000 kilometers off-road. Yeah, that's a hell of a long way, and I think it might be tight, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Mike, 100%. And I'll have to play it as it comes. I think that I'll be making up the vast majority of my distance on those, on the route in forestry trails, farm tracks, things that are pretty well maintained, but there will undoubtedly be, and these are what we go for, the sections that are really, really challenging, when I was in the north of Portugal last time, there was, just like you said, like sections that were incredibly challenging with like real proper off-road, and alarming descents and rock crawling and that kind of thing, which is great fun, but you soon eat up a day in doing that, in a very, very short amount of time. So yeah, I guess we'll see, and it'll be touch and go, but such is the excitement of long distance overland travel, I guess.
Yeah, you've got the added excitement, I suppose, that you're doing it alone as well.
Yeah, man. That's it. Yeah, it certainly adds an extra element of drama to it. Because when you're traveling with another vehicle, you always kind of have that insurance policy that if you get yourself into really deep, you can be winched out or pulled out, or at the very least drive somewhere to get help. Whereas when you're on your own, it's like if you get yourself stuck in a bog hole and you can't get out, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm hiking out to the nearest town, and that town might be, a fair while away. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. The other aspect of it is like I've done shorter trips alone. The Portugal trip, I think, took me 6-7 weeks. And honestly, by the end of that, I was kind of ready to speak to some people, It's a long time to spend on your own with your own thoughts. And so extrapolate that out. I don't know, we'll see how they kind of, from a psychological point of view, it might become interesting, Hopefully I can mitigate it by kind of talking to people along the route this time a little bit more. But yeah, it adds a different dimension to it for sure.
Well, you've just brought me up with an idea. We've been planning to create like a playlist, an Overland Europe playlist. So do you listen to much music when you're traveling?
I do. Yeah, all kinds.
All right. So off the top of your head, tell me a couple of your favorite tracks.
Top of my head. I mean, I listen to a massively diverse kind of catalogue of music, but I have roots in like rock, heavy rock. When I was younger, I used to play in bands. I am a guitarist and singer, and so I used to play in punk bands specifically. So I'm invariably blasting all kinds of, punk and rock and all that kind of thing, the kind of which that you probably will never heard of, like Flatliners, Alkaline Trio. These are, punk bands. But I also like, the classic driving music as well. A bit of like Creedence Clearwater Revival and all that kind of, Americana it definitely finds its way into my playlists
All
too.
right. Well, we'll swap notes on that afterwards then. You can contribute a few tracks to our forthcoming playlist.
I'd love to. Absolutely.
So what else do you have to do to prepare before you disappear?
So right now, just today, actually, I just got the first coat of paint onto the camper body, which I was very pleased about. He went on well. And so that is, now that I've got the paint done, it might sound, not as significant as the mechanical things, which it isn't, but it means that I can start putting accessories back onto the vehicle because I had to strip it completely down. So once I've got another coat on of that, I could start with putting all the lights back on, start to build this, this cooking station that I was talking about on the side, putting my roof rack back on, start to reassemble rather than tearing down, which is always a nice hurdle to surmount,
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I'm going to be facing that down kind of this coming week. I have an interesting one, actually. I've had a stainless steel fresh water tank built for the underside of the vehicle. I'm going to undersling it this time. So I've historically traveled with poly tanks. Mm-hmm. And they've always ruptured no matter what I did, protection plates and, making sure they're tight. For whatever reason, they just don't agree with, well, I think I know the reason. They don't agree with, miles and miles of corrugation, so they end up cracking and stuff. Yep. So I thought it was finally time to bite the bullet and have one made. So that's going to be a fun one, figuring out how to suspend this thing securely from underneath the vehicle and then plumb it all in and then rebuild the pressurized water system that I run in the Land Cruiser as well. After that, it'll be a winch. I finally bought a winch.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. Talk about overdue projects. That one has been a long time coming. So I think the last time that I had a winch was in 2016 in Mexico, actually. And I blew that up trying to recover my cousin Ross. He got his 78 Land Cruiser stuck in a volcanic thermal vent. And it was one of those ones where there was like, it's like a bubbling mud thing underneath a hard crust, And so you drive across it, it looks like normal ground, and you fall through the crust and it's just like, bottomless, hot mud. And so, yeah, that thing sunk like right down to its doors, It must have been 4 feet down by the end. And yeah, blew up the winch doing that. And I've been thinking about getting one since then, which I suppose is 8 years ago now. So
wow.
Yeah, excited to get that back on there and start winching stuff when I need to,
So what did you actually get this time?
I got a Winch Max. So I'm not sure, honestly, how well it will perform. I looked at the reviews and it's a well-reviewed piece of kit, even though it's at the lower end of the budget, or the price point, should I say. They're about 500 euros, more or less, I think. So yeah, I'm going to try my luck with this Winch Max. It's I don't know why they always do it in pounds, but 13,500 pounds, which I suppose is around about 4 tons, more or less. And so, yeah, we'll see how we go with the Winch Max.
Yeah. On the other hand, I hope you don't have to use it.
Indeed. Yeah.
Let's look at the other way around. Going back to your water a moment ago, what filters do you use?
That's something that I need to bottom out for this expedition. I have been using a Katadyn bag filter. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thing that you fill up and hang somewhere, and it uses gravity to feed it down. But, I'm kind of over it, honestly. I'd rather have a proper plumbed in filter system.
Yeah.
But it's been one of those things that I have not had time to really look into, or the headspace to, bottom out. So, if you have any recommendations on that, I'm all ears.
Well, yes and no. Not for necessarily plumbed in, but again, it's a UK company. Go and have a look at Lifesaver.
Aha, Lifesaver. I've heard of them.
They're a spectacular company. I'm not here to do advertising, but they are a spectacular company. Their filters they genuinely filter out everything which is going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And I like them because the ones which we've got similar to a 20-litre jerry can.
Uh-huh.
And we have some bottles as well.
Nice.
And basically, you can put any kind of grotty water in these things. There's a hand pump on it, so it then pushes it through the filter under pressure. But because the pores of the filter are so small, you're getting rid of bacteria, but you're also getting right down to the virus as well. Wow. So not even the smallest viruses can get through these filters.
That is fantastic. It's what you need, you know.
Yeah. And the other thing about them is they have a fail-safe. The fail-safe means that the filters block with time. So the end result is if the filter's blocked, nothing can come out, which means nothing bad can come out.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got other filters on the market, which if you do look at them closely, yeah, they do perform, but then you read through the documentation, it says, well, after so and so many litres, you need to change the filter. Well, so and so many litres of what? If the water's really grotty, that might only be 50 litres. And be honest, who the hell's counting? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So they don't have that fail-safe, which actually stops liquids passing through the container. So at some stage, you do run a risk of, grot coming out, which you don't want. And
that's
again,
it.
Lifesavers in the UK have a talk. They do a 5-litre canister. Got one of those as well. And that's a product which they send out to catastrophes. If there's been some hurricane, God knows what goes through, then they will send out shed loads of these things because they're completely intuitive. I mean, a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old can use them, put water in, pump it, open the tap, you got clean water.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. I got to check out Lifesaver then in that case, because this sounds like the kind of thing that I need to upgrade my filter game, shall we say. So yeah, it sounds like the one. You know, talking about, filters without the fail-safe, on the Pan American Highway expedition that I did, we ran a gravity-fed filter the whole way, and I was quite ill at certain points on that expedition, and I wonder how much of it actually was caused by the filters being at the end of their life cycle and us just continue to put the water through. You know, with the gravity-fed ones, the water's going to come through eventually. Sometimes it takes a while when, you need to change the filters, but when you're in like deepest, darkest Bolivian jungles, you're not getting one of those filters, Yeah. So you just have to kind of batter on with what you have. And so, yeah, it does kind of bring that into focus and makes me think.
I think the thing about filters is, and this year I spent a lot of time researching what is available. Read the small print.
Yeah.
It's quite surprising what you can actually learn about a filter and what it can or cannot do. So regardless of what the brand is, always read the fine print.
Yeah, that's it. This is like, it should be done with everything, but when it's water that takes out viruses, a filter that takes out viruses from your water, it's especially pertinent, I suppose, to know and be pre-armed and pre-warned and stuff. Because, getting giardia or whatever in the middle of a trip sucks a lot.
Absolutely. I think Lifesaver, they were the first people to create a filter. It was actually a bottle. It was called the Lifesaver bottle. I mean, the fact they stick that name on it, Lifesaver, I mean, that's pretty bold to say the least. But it was a case that you can put water in. The bottle has got a pump on the bottom, and when you open the top, you get absolutely perfect water coming out. So
fantastic.
Anyway, enough on brands and bottles and filters.
Sure.
So what other gear are you going to be taking with you?
Good question. So the big upgrade is going to be the Red Arc system for me. The cruiser, as we've touched on in previous podcasts, is 24 volt, which has presented a consistent problem with charging a 12 volt leisure battery system for me throughout my trips. And so getting one of their, it's called a Manager 30. It's a big unit that it's basically a charge controller for anything you want to throw into it. You could put in solar, you could put in vehicle feed, at various different voltages, and it's going to convert it and put out 12 volts for your 12 volt system. So that's going to be mega for me, because on both of my previous trips with this incarnation of the camper, I had problems with power, because it was only run by solar. And as you know, Northern Hemisphere, especially in the UK, winter, there's not a chance you can get as much, enough solar charge into your batteries. So I ended up killing leisure batteries left, right and center. And so, yeah, that's going to be a mega upgrade. I can't wait to install all that and have that running and have my power needs met for the first time. It's going to be really nice.
Yeah. What is your sort of main draw then on your battery reserves?
It's death by a thousand cuts, really. I run a fridge. I run a lot of lights inside. I run the laptop, obviously, with kind of heavy editing and stuff. So it's I'm running it through a power inverter, and you'd be surprised at the amount of. I have far too many camera systems running at any given time, and so I'm always charging batteries for them, and then you've got your sat nav charging phone. It does suck a lot of juice. So yeah, combination of all those things will drain it out pretty quickly.
Well, it sounds as if you're well prepared, though.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I'm trying. Yes. I'm pretending. Yeah. This is probably the most prepared that I've ever been for a trip. I'll put it that way. And with this extra amount of time after, I had to change my ferry, will allow me to hopefully bottom it out really nicely and, have all my systems working. For one reason or another, every single trip I've ever done in the past has always ended up as a mad rush, and I've ended up going with something not working or thinking I'll figure it out on the road and then never figuring it out, and so it'll be nice to have this time and hopefully end up, a little bit better prepared.
I think trying to start off a trip with everything done, you're never going to win that battle.
You know it all too well, man. You do. It's the way that it goes. Like, it's a funny thing. Even with me having this extra month, I'm already looking at it thinking like, there's stuff on here that's going to take bloody ages, and I bet I'll leave with something. And so if I'm thinking that now, I can only imagine what I'll be fighting to get finished, on the 9th of January or whenever it is that I leave. So. Yeah, stay tuned for that one.
I will. We will definitely stay tuned for that one. I'm just wondering if we're not going to have time, maybe just before you leave, to sit down here again on air and, wish you on your way, but also let's listen to the problems you haven't solved. Maybe.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. We can. And, by that point, I would hope that I will have the vast majority of the things that I've been talking about in this episode bottomed out, And so I can kind of run you through those and as you said before, inevitable problems that crop up when you're doing mechanics on a 30-plus-year-old vehicle. So we can have a kind of rundown on that and, as you say, wish me well on the trip and see how we're going.
Yeah, well, let's do that then. We'll plan and talk in, let's say, the best part of 4 weeks. We'll sew it up here today, and I shall leave you to go and play in your workshop and rebuild your car.
Thank you very much indeed, Mike. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always, and I'm looking forward to the next time already.
Great. Speak soon.
All right. Cheers, Mike.
Thanks for tuning in to the At Overland Europe podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and download our app for more adventures and exclusive content. Remember, you can find our guest social media and websites linked in the description below. Until next time, safe travels.